Welcome the viewers to this session. In this session we will discuss Jaina philosophy. This is the first class of Jaina philosophy. So once we start, we will discuss the little bit background of Jainism. As you know that whenever we have started a new school, we have given a little bit background, brief background of that school, so that you can have a knowledge and understanding of that school, that how the school developed and who are those scholars contributed the theory in that schools and how much time it took for its own existence and many more things. Today you find that in Jainism, when we will discuss about the Tirthankaras. When you say Tirthankaras, you must understand that Tirthankaras according to Jaina are those who are liberated souls. That means they are human beings, they are also in a bondage, and due to their own effort, due to their own desire, they could able to detach from the worldly affairs. As a result, they will be called as a blissful person or a scholar which truly treated as Tirthankaras, because they do not have any passions towards the worldly affairs. They do not have raga, they do not have anger towards others, they do not have any desire for the worldly life, so on and so forth. Therefore, Tirthankaras are known as those scholars or those liberated souls who have no attachment towards the objects of the world. Now starts with the slides. As I said that there are 24 Tirthankaras counted in Jainism. In Jainism it is counted that there are only 24 Tirthankaras, and Mahavira, Vardhamana Mahavira was the last Tirthankara in Jainism. He was believed to live in the 6th century BC, and it was also believed that he was a contemporary of Gautama Buddha, because Buddha also, it was believed that he was alive in this 6th century BC. The immediate successor of Mahavira was Parshvanatha. Parshvanatha also is believed to be a Tirthankara, because he, with his own desire and effort, he able to detach from the worldly affairs. He does not have any cravings for the worldly pleasures. So these two Tirthankaras you know now, and there are others, 22 Tirthankaras exist in the Jaina philosophy. Jainism is derived from the word Jaina. Jaina means conquer all the passions. We the ordinary human beings, we live in this earth and we need different objects for our different purposes. We can't live in this earth without the worldly objects. But here Jainism said that those who can conquer themselves, conquer the sense organs, so that sense organs won't be attached with the different objects for the different purposes. They can control their sense organs, they do not have any anger towards others, they don't hurt others, they won't even have any kind of passions to get some worldly pleasure life in this earth. So therefore Jainism is derived from the word Jaina, conquer. The person who can conquer all these raga, dvesa, sense organs can be termed as Jainism or will be known as Tirthankaras. They said that raga means anger, dvesa, desire you have a ichha or cravings towards the worldly affairs. Then senses, we have 5 sense organs and mind will the another sense organ, so that we have 6 sense organs. He say that with our own effort and practice we can conquer all our 6 sense organs, so that the 6 sense organs won't desire for many worldly pleasures in this earthly life. He said that it is applied to the liberated soul who obtain emancipation. It is applied to the liberated soul who obtain emancipation. He is saying that Tirthankaras are those who have a liberated soul. who does not need anything in this world to live. There are, you find that in Jainism, those who are practicing in that time, few are wearing nude and few are also wearing white clothes, because they thought that they can detach with all the affairs and all the pleasurely objects in this earth. Moving further, the Jainas do not believe in God, because for them Tirthankaras are the real person or the liberated soul whom to be admired or whom to be respected. So instead of believing God, they were believing the Tirthankaras. Tirthankaras are those who have get their soul liberated with their own effort, by putting their own effort and desire to do so. And it's not happening overnight. They put the constant effort to see that they can conquer their senses, they can conquer their body, they can conquer their anger and anguishness. In this way, you find that Jainism as a school, they do not believe in God, however, they respect and they admire to their Tirthankaras. And here Tirthankaras will be considered as a high spirit, as a supernatural being who can able to conquer his or her sense organs. Therefore, I have said that Jainism do not believe in God, but they admire to their Tirthankaras. They believe that Tirthankaras were liberated soul and blissful, but they were in bondage in their past, and due to their personal effort and desire they could able to achieve so. Every human being has a soul that believed by Jainism, and in Tirthankaras also are those person who has a soul, and the soul was indulged with bondage once upon a time, and this concept, this idea, the bondage was realized by that person or human being, and after that putting his or her own effort to come out from the bondage or remove the bondage from his or her life, it is a very difficult task. But however, those who can do so, they can achieve the liberation while living in this earth as well. And according to Jainas, those who achieve the liberation or emancipation while living in this earth are known as Tirthankaras. So therefore, one always aspire for the liberated soul, and for that one should strive to do many things which results that he or she detached from worldly affairs. In due course of time, if you see that Jainism from the starting to the ending, once things are moving, then there are many followers of Jainism comes up. They understand that the importance of rational argument in Jaina philosophy. They also believe that why Jainism preaches the detachment from the worldly affairs, why Jainism thinks that liberation one should aspire for. Many followers also believe that whenever Jainism said that we should not hurt others, that is a much appropriate and rational. So therefore, after a long time, with all these beliefs and rational practices, it is found that many of the followers could not able to do the same practices and rituals constructed by the Jainism or formulated by the Jainism. As a result, what happens? There are two groups pops up, or Jainism, the followers of Jainism divided into two groups. One is known as Swatambara, another group name is Digambara. Digambaras are those who are very rigid in their nature. That means whatever Jainism prescribed, the norms, rules, regulation, they are accepting without any violation, without any further modification. But in case of Swatambara, they are much accommodative. Depend on the context, situation, they think that something can be modified, and they believe in the modified version of Jainas rules, regulations and practices. Digambaras, you find that Digambaras give up all passions and possessions including clothes. Digambara groups are those groups that thought that we need not to have any passions for anything. Therefore, they did not wear any clothes. They thought that we do not require any clothes, because the body which we are having, it is now no more bondage. It does not require any of the worldly affairs. If we require anything to hide our body, that means we have a desire for that thing. So therefore, since they do not believe in having any desire, any passions, they are become nude. They do not require clothes to wear their bodily part. So these are Digambaras. If you see the Swatambaras, Swatambaras are wearing white clothes because they believe that we are living in a society where other creatures have equal rights to live and other animals have a respect in their own life. So therefore, we cannot be moved here and there with a naked body. Therefore, though they understand that we need not to have any passions for any things in this world, however, they wear the white clothes, because white symbol stands for Swatik. White symbol stands for Sattva. Sattva stands for transparency. Sattva stands for something pure and eternal. Therefore, they believe that since we are living in a society, we cannot roam here and there with our naked body. We have to wear some clothes, and that is a white color. So therefore, in this way you find that Jainism as a philosophy, as a system, as a school is divided into two groups, and these two groups has a different opinion on a particular issue. And however, these two groups will be considered as Jainism. Jainism standpoint or Jainism outlooks. According to Jainas, the world consists of two kinds of reality. One is living, another is non-living. Jainism very clearly emphasized that there are two sorts of things available in this earth, or there are two sorts of things have existence in this earth. In one side there are living beings, in the other side it is a non-living beings. While talking about that living beings, they said that there are plenty of living beings in this earth. On the other side, they said that equally also we have plenty of non-living creatures in this earth. When they talk about living creatures, they have not focused their idea only the human beings, rather they have included insects, reptiles, birds, animals, even a small creature, including human beings. So whenever they talk about living beings, they include all these animals, all this creature who has life, who is living in this earth. On the other hand, if you find that non-living objects, which includes each and every object that the living beings require for their different purposes to live in this earth. So therefore, in the one hand you find living creatures, on the other hand you find non-living creatures which are really required by the living creatures. So this is two realities. One reality has a life in this earth, another reality does not have any life in this earth. Apart from that, they said that every living creature has a soul. Unlike Buddhism never said that soul exists, but however Jainism is a Nastika school which does not believe in God but believe in the existence of soul. Therefore they said that every living creature, starting with insects, reptiles to the human beings, all life has a soul, and thus we should not harm to any creature, we should not give any injury to the others. So therefore you find that many Jainas, they put some clothes on their mouth, on their nose, because no insect should be entered in their mouth so that it will be die. So therefore you find that Jains are very, very prescriptive in this nature. They have respect to each life, those who are having in this earth, and they said that one does not have any rights to hurt others, one should not give injury to others, one should not wound to any life. Jainism holds the view that there are innumerable number of material substances and each substance has innumerable aspects. They said that if you see that there are living creatures and non-living creatures, there are innumerable substances, and each substance again has innumerable aspects or innumerable characteristics. Consider a table. There are different objects exist in this world. Consider one among them is a table. Now if you see that the table has so many characteristics, so many aspects of it. In this way Jainism believes that a pluralistic nature, they are realistic pluralism. They are realistic because they believe that the existence of living being and non-living being. They are pluralistic because they believe that there are many, not one. There are many substances exist in this earth and each substance has innumerable characteristics, and this is known the theory Anekantavada. There are many substances and each substance has many characteristics. This theory is known as Anekantavada. Jainism believes to give respect to others' opinion on any issue or objects. Jainism also believes that since there are different objects and each object has a plenty of characteristics, an individual giving an opinion on that object must be a relative standpoint, because a person have a limited knowledge, and with a limited knowledge cannot able to know all the aspects of that object. Further they said that there will be no such situation where one can claim that I know the full form or completely about that object, because there may be a possibility that once you listed out all the features of the object, at the last you may be forget to write some or other qualities of that object which will be known by the others. Therefore whatever your opinion on that object, it is not in a full form, rather it is in a very relative form. Therefore they said that we all human beings have a limited knowledge, and because of the limited knowledge we judge the objects from a relative standpoint. We cannot judge the objects in a complete form. An example I will give, let us say there is a computer before you. Now you see a computer for a different purpose, therefore your judgment on that object will be different from your friends, if your friends look to that object or perceive that object for differently. And henceforth Jainism said that we must give respect to each and everyone's opinion on an issue or object, because there are many issues and each object has many characteristics. If one has given his or her opinion on an object, we must consider it from the relative standpoint. We must say that we must respect to that judgment as well. Every judgment is subject to some condition and limitation. Now hope you can understand why they said that every judgment is subject to some condition and limitation, because we have a limited knowledge, because we are a human being, and because of limited knowledge we perceive the objects differently, and because of some condition and situation we make our judgment on that object, and certainly that judgment from the relative standpoint. And henceforth while respecting to others' opinion or judgment on a particular object from a relative standpoint, we must also admit that all our judgment on a particular object or a fact or an issue or an event is limited to its condition and a situational factor. Whatever we will have an opinion on a particular object, it has its own limitation based on the condition, based on the situational atmosphere. As I said, that your friends may have a different opinion on the computer which is before you, because he or she perceives the computer differently. However, if you see that your opinion on the computer certainly different from your friends, because you perceive the objects for different purposes, therefore your judgment on that object is different from your friend's judgment. Now moving further, as I said that Jainism advocates the realistic pluralism. I said that why it is realistic, because they believe that existence, life and non-life both are existing in this earth, therefore realistic. Animate objects and non-animate objects exist in this earth, therefore they are realistic. Pluralism, because they believe that it is not only one animate object exists or one non-animate inanimate object exists. What they said is that there are plenty of animate and non-animate or inanimate object exist in this earth. Now it believes the existence of innumerable number of material atoms and individual souls. In the same way, indirectly they said that they believe the existence of creatures, those who have a life, and they believe the other side, there are many objects which does not have a life. All matters and souls have their own existence. There is not only innumerable matters exist, but also there are innumerable characteristics found in each matter, what we had already discussed. It is pluralistic because the reality is not only multiple but also manifold. How it is so? If you see the object, you find that the object may be used for different purposes. Here it is not the end. The object may be perceived differently, because the object may be treated because of the cognizer's different background. It is because of the cognizer's multiple background, the cognizer cognizes the object differently. Therefore, it is pluralistic because the reality is not only multiple but also manifold. Each substance has both positive and negative characters. What is positive characters? You might be finding that, like if I say that X is a student and he is having some positive character and he is also having some negative character, then you might be thinking that positive character are those character which are good, one must have that character, and negative character are those character which one should avoid it, which one should refrain from it. But this is not the explanation Jainism has given. According to Jainism, positive character are those character which exist in that object. Here object I mean both in case of a life, in case of non-life, both in case of the things which have a life and in other side the things which does not have a life. Therefore, I am saying that positive character are those character which exist in the object and found in any time, and negative character are those character which does not present in that object or which does not found in that object. For example, if I say that the table is brown, here brown is a positive color because it exists in the table. But if I say that the table is not green color, then the green color is not found in the table. Therefore, it is a negative character of that object. In this way, you have to understand that every object, both animate or inanimate, every object has both positive characters and negative characters. This is the way Jainism explains the characters, and for them there are plenty of substances, and each substance has a lot of characteristics in it. Sometimes it is a positive character, sometimes it is a negative character. The idea of substance. Now we will discuss that how Jainism look to the issue of substance, how Jainism really treats the concept substance, what they mean by substance, and how they behave towards the concept substance. According to Jaina metaphysics, matter or Pudgala and soul or jiva are separate and independent realities, because they believe that though there are plenty of things exist in this earth, however, we can say that in one side things which have a life, they have existence, and in other side things which exist and they do not have a life. Therefore, there are two realities you can see. Jainism discriminates the realities into twofold. One is that objects which has a life, and another side is the objects which do not have life. So therefore, they said that there are two separate and independent realities. Jaina thinkers also expressed that every substance possesses innumerable characters, and characters will be known as dharma. For example, if I say what is the dharma of water, the dharma of water is flowing down. In the same way, every object has a dharma. The dharma of a pen to write, the dharma of a student to study, the dharma of a teacher to teach to the students. In the same way, you must understand what is dharma. Dharma here is not meant as a religion, rather dharma here means for duty. What is your duty to do that? Therefore, they say that every objects has innumerable aspects, and because of the aspect we cognize the object, saying that the substance possesses innumerable characters and it is their dharma, and therefore substances are known as dharmi. Each substance has again two kind of characters we find. One is essential characters, another is accidental characters. Essential characters are those characters, apart from it the object cannot exist at all. The same example I will give, say if you take a mango, the essential character of mango is the mangoness, but the accidental character of mango is say yellow color, good shape, the sweet taste, and many more things. But here if you find that the shape, size, color and taste may differ, therefore they say that accidental characters of an object may appear and may go away. However, the essential characters are those characters which are exist essential in that object, and without that character, without that essential character, the object cannot be called as with the same name. If the mangoness is not there in the mango, then the fruit cannot be named as mango, or if at all it will be named, it is something different from the name mango. Therefore, you can find that essential character and accidental character. In case of human being, you find say essential character is rationality. Without the rationality, the individual cannot be claimed as a human being, cannot be treated as a human being. If you see the accidental character of a human being, then you find that pain, pleasure, happiness, unhappiness, emotions, etc. Because all these features may come and go away. However, the rationality of a human being cannot go away. If it is at all can be go away from that individual, then the individual cannot be considered as a human being. An individual to be judged as a human being, he or she must have a rationality. That is an essential character. He or she may not have all the accidental characters, as I said. He may be fair, he may be black, he may not be here, he may be here, all these are accidental characters. Therefore, accidental characters of an object may not remain fixed for all the times. However, the essential characters are those characters which are supposed to be in that object till the object exists. In the same way, I said the essential character of a substance remains as long as the substance remains, and the substance cannot exist without its essential characters. Now, the example, if you can see that the essential character of soul is consciousness, but the accidental character of soul are desire, pain, volitions, pleasure, etc. Here, if you mark that, unlike Buddhism, Jainism said that the essential character of soul is consciousness. If there is no consciousness, then there will be no soul. If there is no consciousness, we the human being cannot be functioning, cannot make our sense organs move further, cannot make our sense organs alert towards the worldly object. Therefore, they said that consciousness is an essential character of the soul, and every living creature has a soul. Therefore, it is because of the soul we are able to communicate, we are able to think, we are able to move, we are able to do many more things. Therefore, consciousness is an essential element, essential character of the soul. However, if you see the Buddhism never said that consciousness is an essential character of the soul. Accidental characters, as I said, of a soul, that is a pain, pleasure, and all this, because sometimes we have a mental pain, sometimes we have a mental pleasure. So in other words, also in other way, if you can find that, sometimes we have a physical pleasure, sometimes we have a physical pain, and all this mental pleasure, mental pain, physical pleasure, and physical pain may go away, may not be remain with the individual for all the time, but the soul must be there with the human being till his or her death. Therefore, they said that consciousness is an essential character of the soul, and soul is found in every living creatures, and therefore we should not harm to anyone, those who have a life and those who doesn't have a life as well, because we must respect to others, because we believe that soul is an eternal one and is an essential attribute of a human being, and because of the soul we are able to communicate, we are able to do many more things. Because of the soul our sense organ moves, mind thinks. So therefore, one must avoid to giving injury to others, one must avoid not hurting to others. So therefore, they practice non-stealing, non-killing of any animals who has a life. Now, we the human beings have limited knowledge, so we cannot know completely about an object, but we can know the object from a relative standpoint. Thus, all our knowledge of an object is partial and relative. Here they made a claim very strongly, saying that since we are human beings, we have a soul, and we are doing things for different purposes in different time. If it is so, then we must remember that whatever we know of an object, whatever we know about an object, it's a very limited. So therefore, our knowledge about that object is relative and partial. We cannot know all the aspects of an object in its full form, because Jainism said that even a single object, single matter has innumerable aspects in it. Therefore, they believe that the partial knowledge or a relative standpoint, and henceforth they come forward with a prescription, say that we must respect others' opinion on a particular object as well. Now further they said that Kevala Jnani or omniscient person are those who can able to know all the aspects of an object. And who can be Kevala Jnani? Kevala Jnani can be a person who is omniscient and omnipresent, and since human beings have a limited knowledge and they live for a limited time in this earth, they cannot be considered as a Kevala Jnani or omniscient person, and henceforth no human beings has a complete knowledge about any object in this earth. We cannot even prove an object absolutely in its full form, because we must admit that we have a limited knowledge, and with the help of limited knowledge we cannot think that we have proof the object in its full form, and there will be no additional proof required to prove that object, or nothing remains to include in our proof. No single statement can explain the complex nature of an object. Further they said that if we are a limited human being, we have a limited knowledge, then whatever statement we made on an object, this is the relative and partial. Therefore, no single statement can explain the complex nature of an object, because an object has innumerable aspect, and if you add all the aspects, it is a complex nature, and we could not able to know all the aspects of an object. Henceforth, any statement that we made, it is a relative, partial, and as a result whatever we are making the statement on an object, this is not full-fledgedly explaining about that object. Jainism pronounced two theories to explain that how our standpoint, how our judgment on an object is very relative. These two theories are known as Syadvada and Nayavada. The Syadvada and Nayavada are the epistemological and logical theory derived from the metaphysical theory Anekantavada. Anekantavada said that there are plenty of objects exist in this, there are plenty of objects exist in this earth, and each object has innumerable aspects, and this is the theory of Anekantavada. Now this metaphysical theory Anekantavada is a foundation theory of Jainism. Now there are two other theories derived from this metaphysical theory. These two other theories are epistemological and logical theories. One is Syadvada, another is Nayavada. These two theories explains that how we have a relative judgment on a particular object. These three theories, Anekantavada, Syadvada and Nayavada, are the foundational theories in Jaina philosophy. A metaphor has given to explain the concept of these three theories. What is that metaphor? They said that a bird has two wings. The two wings here are known as Syadvada and Nayavada. However, the bird as the essence is called as Anekantavada. It is a beautiful way of explaining Jaina's philosophy. Now you can see Jainism has three foundational theories. One is Syadvada, second one is Nayavada, and the third one is Anekantavada. Then they have given a metaphor to explain the standpoint of all this theory. They said that it is a bird has two wings, and these two wings are known as Syadvada and Nayavada. However, the bird itself is known as Anekantavada. Now Jainism contradicts the view of Hinduism in the one hand and Buddhism on the other hand. When they contradicts Hinduism, they said that Hinduism claims that things can be exist permanently, because Veda, Upanishada and other scriptures says that many things exist permanently in this earth, and they believe that things can be continue in the same fashion. However, Jainism said that nothing can be exist permanently in its full form, and whatever you are saying, this is a partial, your judgment is partial and relative towards an object, because you as a human being, you have a limited knowledge and you cannot able to identify all the features of that object. Therefore, you cannot make a claim saying that things exist permanently forever. So in this way, Jainism rejects the views of Hinduism, saying that Hinduism claim of permanence of an object may be ruled out or may be discarded. On the other hand, they said that Buddhism as a school always talks about momentariness. That means nothing is permanent in this earth, not even a single moment. Here Jainism counter argued to Buddhism, saying that if nothing is permanent, how come your theory will be permanent? Your theory is saying that nothing is permanent. Then coming back, reverting back to the theory, it implies that your theory cannot be a permanent one. If nothing is permanent, how come your theory will be permanent? Therefore, it is a contradiction what you are saying. Initially you are saying nothing is permanent, not even a single moment. And if it is so, then how can you claim that your theory will be permanent? And if you further accept that your theory is not permanent, then whatever you have said is contradicting what you have said earlier. That means you are committing an error of self contradiction. And what are the basis on which you can claim that nothing is permanent? Because whatever knowledge you have, that is limited, you must accept it. And with the limited knowledge, whatever your opinion on an object, that is a relative and partial, and with that partial knowledge you cannot say that everything is momentary. So on the one hand, Jainism criticizes Hinduism permanency theory, on the other side he criticizes the theory of momentariness of Buddhism, but however very wisely taken the middle path, saying that everything can be judged from a relative standpoint. That means he believes that in a relative approach, that means a thing can be judged from a relative standpoint. Therefore, they said that everything is relative in this earth. If you say x, then you say that x is relative to y. If you say y, then y is relative to x or z or so on and so forth. So therefore, relativity for them is to be exist, because whatever knowledge we have, whatever way we want to cognize the object, that is a relative and partial, and that is the truth behind our all cognitions. They deduced the Syadvada and Nayavada as an epistemological and logical theory from the metaphysical theory on Anekantavada, which I had shared with you now. Syadvada speaks about the theory of relative of knowledge. Syadvada talks about the theory of relativity of knowledge. In other words, every judgment is relative. Any judgment that you make on an object, it is a relative in its nature. That is a Syadvada explanation. You might be knowing that there is a story behind that Syadvada, saying that everything is relative. There are 6 persons. Instead of identifying an element, someone is touching his trunk, someone is touching his leg, someone is touching his tail, and they are claiming that this animal is not an elephant, rather it is a wall or something, because of their own experience. Here Jainism is saying that each and every one, whatever they are claiming, it is true, because it is relatively true, because they cannot perceive the whole animal completely. Therefore, whatever their opinion on that elephant, by touching the trunk, if they say that this is something different, if somebody touch his leg saying that it is a pillar, so in that case you find that the people who are touching the elephant's trunk, leg and tail, they have a different opinion on the elephant, but however elephant is an animal. Here the universal, that elephant is an animal, is true, no doubt about it, but we cannot reject even the judgment given by the persons who have touches the different parts of the elephant, because they are also equally true, because whatever they are touching it from their relative standpoint, whatever judgment they are giving, it is also true. So in this way Syadvada will be explaining maybe in the next class. Now coming to the Nayavada, the knowledge of a thing is determined in relation to other things, and that is even partial in its nature. I read further, the knowledge of a thing is determined, or the knowledge of an object is determined in relation to other objects, and that is even partial in its nature. What they said is that whenever you judge a particular object, your judgment on that particular object also has a relation to other objects as well, because the object cannot exist independently, the object must also have a relation with some other objects. So therefore whenever you are judging to that object with a limited knowledge, your judgment also making a relation to the other objects, that means in the same time equally you are judging also other objects as well, those are related to that object. For example, you are judging the object say L. Now L has a relation with R, S, T, U, etc. Now whenever you are making a judgment on L, you are also partially making a judgment on R, S, T, U, etc. because the object cannot exist independently of it. Therefore they say that the knowledge of a thing is determined in relation to other things. Whenever you claim that this is the object, that means you know that this object is different from other objects, or this object has a relation with so and so objects. So therefore they say that the knowledge of a thing is determined in relation to other things, and that is even partial in its nature. So therefore you can find that the two epistemological and logical theory, how it can be derived from Anekantavada, which states that there are plenty of substances exist in this earth, and each substance has innumerable characteristics. Syadvada also talks about the relativity knowledge, and Nayavada also talks about that partial knowledge. However, in Nayavada you find that while judging an object, we are making a judgment to other objects as well, which has a relation to that object. On the other side, Syadvada talks about only the relativity of knowledge. Now it states that the Nayavada, now we will be focusing on the Nayavada. Nayavada states that the analytic view of reality, the reality which we explain analytically, it expresses that the partial reality of the object and partial knowledge of one of the innumerable aspects of a thing is called Naya. The same thing I have said, the partial knowledge of one of the innumerable aspect of a thing is called Naya. That means there are plenty of substances exist in this earth, and each substance has an innumerable aspect, and each aspect, he is saying that the partial knowledge of one of the aspect among other aspect is known as Naya. See how our knowledge is so partial and relative. Judgment based on the partial knowledge is also included in Naya. Nayavada consists of sevenfold judgments. The sevenfold judgments we will discuss in the next class. However, those judgments cannot even together explain the complex nature of objects. Even the individual judgment expresses about the object partially. Naya is a partial viewpoint of a cognizer which does not rule out the possibility of other viewpoints. He is saying that there are sevenfold of Naya, and even that sevenfold of Naya, if you put together, it will not able to explain the complex nature of object. Now you can imagine what they mean by the complex nature of object. Further they said that whatever we are giving the judgment on an object, it is a very relative standpoint. At the same time we are not ruling out the other's opinion on that object as well. They said that each object has an innumerable aspect, and even our judgment on the one aspect among other aspect will be termed as Naya. However, in the next class we will discuss what is Nayavada and what are the sevenfold judgment. In addition to that we will also discuss Syadvada. Today this is all about. Thank you.